We should always keep a clear separation between private life and the external world. And when it comes to your home network, this separation is crucial. But our usual routers just don't offer all the advanced features needed to make this a reality. Only a few expensive ones have such advanced features. But what if I told you there's a free and open source solution that can help us to transform our setup to the next level? In today's video, we will virtualize pfSense in Proxmox. I'm going to set up pfSense as a virtual router that will handle the network traffic for my other VMs. So let's get started. Let's go to Google and search for pfSense. Here I will click on the download link. Once we are on the pfSense official website, I will click on this download button. It'll take us to the NetGate official website. NetGate requires us to sign up for an account before we can download pfSense. So let's create an account. To do that, I will click on this button on top right corner. Let's fill in the details. Then click on Create. My NetGate account is created, and I'm already logged in. Now to download the ISO file, I need to go back to the pfSense download page. To make this simple, I will open a new tab and search for pfSense. Then click on the download link, exactly how I did it before. Once the pfSense website is opened, I will hit on this download button. Now it's time to choose the installation image. For my setup, I will go with this option. Let's add this to my cart. To proceed, I will click on this Enter Cart and then hit the Checkout button. Let's fill in the details. Once this is filled, make sure to check this box at the end. Then click on Complete Order. We need to wait until the download button appears. Then click on this button to save this in my system. Now, if we open the download page, we can see this file is in gzip format. To extract it, I need to install 7-zip. So let's go back to Google and search for 7-zip. I will click on this download link, which will take us to the official website of 7-zip. From here, I will download the 64-bit version for Windows. Once the download is completed, I will proceed to install it. Let's click on the exe file, which we downloaded, and allow it to install. Here, we can choose the destination folder where the application will be installed. The default folder is good for me. So let's click on Install. 7-zip has been installed successfully on my system. Now let's open it. Here, we need to find the gzip file, which I downloaded earlier, and copy the ISO file from here. Then paste it in the desktop. To make this simple, let's rename the file to pfSense.iso. Next, I will go to Proxmox and look for the local storage section. From there, go to the ISO Images tab. I already have 5 ISO files here. Let's upload the NetGate ISO file as well. It will take some time to complete, so let's wait. As you can see, the ISO file has been uploaded successfully. Now I will start setting up pfSense. This is a little different from the usual setup. Don't worry, I will walk you through the step-by-step process. First, let's go back to Proxmox. Now under the System, go to the Network tab. Here, ENP6S0 is my physical LAN adapter. This interface allows Proxmox to access the internet. Next, I have WLO1, which is my Wi-Fi interface. It won't be used for this setup. This VMBR0 is a Linux bridge created by Proxmox. It acts as a virtual switch that's connect all the VMs in Proxmox. It allows each of them get the IP address directly from the router. We are going to use it as the WAN connection of pfSense. I will create another Linux switch to handle the LAN side as well. Let's do that. Click on the Create button, and from the drop-down, select Linux Bridge. Now for the name, I will use VMBR1, and for the IP address, we can use any address since it's going to be used internally. Then click on Create, and hit the Apply Configuration button. Click Yes on this pop-up to continue. Now I have one more virtual bridge. Right now, it's not linked to anything. Next, I will create a new virtual machine by clicking on this Create VM button. In this pop-up, the VM ID has been auto-assigned. I will name it as pfSense and click on Next. Here, I will select the ISO file, which I uploaded earlier. In System, I don't need to make any changes, so let's click on Next. This disk configuration will work perfectly fine for this setup. The CPU and memory configurations are also fine for me. So let's move to the Network tab. Let's enable this option as I don't need a network device now. I will configure it later. Let's quickly review the summary page. Once done, I will click on Finish. Now let's configure network connection for this new virtual machine. Select the VM and go to the Hardware tab. Here click on Add, then select Network Device. Add VMBR0 for WAN connection and change the model to Intel E1000. Else we might face connectivity issue. Once that's set, click on Add. Next, I will add the second network device. VMBR1 for the LAN connection. And let's change the model to Intel E1000. And click on Add. Now this pfSense VM has two network devices. One for WAN and one for LAN. Now let's start the VM and install pfSense on it. Let's start by selecting the pfSense virtual machine. Once selected, we will open the console to interact with it directly. Next, we will start the virtual machine. And as it starts, the pfSense installation screen will appear, confirming that the system is booting correctly from the ISO file. To make the process easier to follow, I will set the console window to full screen mode. Then, we will proceed by accepting the license agreement. On the welcome screen, we will select the Install option to begin the installation process. Now, the setup is prompting us to configure the network. Let's click on OK to move forward. The next step is to select the WAN interface. Since I attached VMBR0 first, the system identifies EM0 as the WAN interface. I will select it and continue. Now we need to adjust the network operation mode. For this setup, we will stick with the default settings. So let's proceed with it. Next, the installer prompts us to select the LAN interface. Here, I attached VMBR1 afterward, so the system identifies EM1 as the LAN interface. Let's select it. I am good with the default settings here, so let's continue. Here we can see the summary of the WAN and LAN interfaces we just configured. If everything looks good, we can continue. Now the system will check for an internet connection and shows a notification stating that this device doesn't have an active pfSense Plus subscription. That's perfectly fine since we will proceed with the Community Edition. Now we need to select the file system type and partition scheme. The default options are ZFS and GPT. These are ideal for our setup, so we will continue. Then it prompts us to set up ZFS. Since there's only one drive, it automatically selects a Stripe configuration. For now, we are good with it. Next, we need to select the disk. Since there's only one drive available, we'll press Enter to continue. Now the system will prompt us for the confirmation to apply the disk configuration. Let's select Yes to continue. The next step is to choose the version of pfSense Community Edition to install. We will go with the current stable release, version 2.7.2. It will take some time to install. Now that the setup is complete, select OK by pressing Enter. Once the installation is complete, the system now prompts us to reboot. Let's reboot it. As the system restarts, it displays a few options on the screen. Among these, you'll notice the IP address assigned to pfSense from the WAN side, which in this case is 192.168.0.194. This is the address provided by the network's upstream router. I can also notice the default LAN IP address that pfSense will use to assign to the devices on this network. However, I want to modify this default LAN IP address to suit my network requirements. To do this, we need to open the Interface Configuration menu. Type 2 and hit Enter, which will open the Set Interfaces IP address option. Next, we need to select which interface to modify. Since we are changing the LAN configuration, type 2 again and hit Enter. Then the system will ask us whether to configure the LAN interface's IPv4 address via DHCP. Since we want to set this manually, so I will type in and press Enter. Now I will provide the new IP address for the LAN interface, which will be 10.17.13.1, but you can choose any valid address, just ensure it ends with 1. After this, the system will prompt you to select a subnet mask. I will choose 24, which corresponds to this subnet mask. Next, it will prompt us to set an upstream gateway address. For now, leave this blank and press Enter to continue. You will also be prompted to configure the IPv6 address for the LAN interface. Since we are not using DHCP for IPv6, so I will enter in, then leave the IP address blank. The next step is to enable the DHCP server on the LAN. Enter Y, as this allows pfSense to assign IP addresses automatically to the connected devices. Now, let's specify the starting IP address range for the DHCP server. Use the same base IP address you entered earlier, but ensure it starts from 2. For example, I will set 10.17.13.2 as the starting address. Similarly, input the ending IP address for the range. Ensure it stays within the subnet and ends at 253. Here, I will use 10.17.13.253. Then it will prompt us to revert to HTTP for the Web Configurator protocol. Select In. Once the configuration is complete, the system will display a summary of the IP settings and prompt you to press Enter to continue. After pressing Enter, you will return to the initial screen, where all the configurations are now active. With this setup complete, you are ready to proceed. Let's exit full screen mode as our work here is done. Now let's create a Windows VM. I already have a saved template for this. For more details on Proxmox templates and advanced features, check out the video linked in the I button. Let's use it by simply right-clicking on the template and select Clone. In this pop-up, the VM ID has been auto-assigned to 109. I will name this VM as Win11 Network Test, but you can choose any name according to your preference. Then click on Clone. Once the VM is created, let's select it from the list and go to the Hardware tab. Here, I will select the network device and click on the Edit button to modify the network settings. I will change the bridge from VMBR0 to VMBR1 and click on OK. This adjustment connects the VM's network to the pfSense LAN port. Now let's go to Console and start the VM. Then I will log into it. Now I will open a browser to access pfSense homepage. But in the taskbar, it's showing there is no network available. Let's right-click on this icon and select Network and Internet Settings. Currently, there's no internet access. Let's go to Properties. Here we can see an IP address is assigned to this VM. This indicates that the router is functioning correctly. So let's go back to the browser and try to access the pfSense router page. To do this, I will enter the router URL 10.17.13.1. But if you have used a different LAN IP address, it should end with .1. It's prompted with a security warning because pfSense has a self-signed certificate. But don't worry, we can proceed by clicking on Advanced and then select the option to continue unsafe. We are able to access the pfSense login page. Here I will use the default credentials. The username is admin and the password is pfSense. Let me show it to you. Then click on Sign In. And with that, we are logged into our virtual router, pfSense. Once logged in, the pfSense welcome page will appear, and shortly after, it will redirect us to the pfSense Setup Wizard. The Setup Wizard begins with an introductory screen. I will click on Next to proceed to Step 1, and then click Next again to move to Step 2. On this page, the default hostname looks fine for me, but you can modify it if required. For the domain name, I will enter tech.local. Now let's point our primary DNS address and the secondary DNS address to Google servers. Then I will uncheck the Override DNS option to ensure the settings remain consistent. Once done, click on Next. Here, I will keep the time server hostname as it is and update the time zone as per my location. You can select the time zone that applies to your location. Then click on Next to proceed. For the WAN interface type, the default option DHCP works well for this setup, so I won't make any changes here. However, if you prefer to configure a static IP, you can change this. For these fields, the default settings are looking good to me. I will leave the RFC 1918 private networks and Bogon networks options enabled to block unauthorized access. Here, I have the option to change the LAN IP address. I will skip this step as I already changed it before. Let's click on Next. Now let's change the password here and confirm it. Once done, I will click on Next. Here, I will click on the Reload button to restart the router with the new configurations. Now we're done with the initial configuration. Next, we will check for updates. Since I am using the current stable release, the system is already up to date. So let's go back to the pfSense dashboard. Here, a license agreement pop-up will appear. I will click on Accept. A thank you note will appear. Let's close this and proceed. Next, I will resolve the internet connectivity issue. To do that, let's go to the Services tab and select DNS Resolver. Here, I will enable the DNS query forwarding by checking the Enable Forwarding Mode checkbox. And click on the Save button. Then hit Apply Changes. Let's now test the internet connectivity. To do this, I will go to Google and check if we can access the internet. We are able to access it. Let's also check the network settings to ensure everything is working. Here we can see that the connection status is now showing it has internet access. As a final step, I will set the network type to private. To do that, let's go to Properties and select the Private Network option. Now that our network is set to private, we can keep a clear separation between our network and the external world. As our pfSense is installed, we can focus on making our network configuration even more secure. If you found this video helpful, let us know in the comment section. Also, check out the next video where I will dive into another advanced topic to enhance your setup. See you in the next one.